Thank you for joining us on the BRTV channel 102. This is Nigeria Watch. Thank you and welcome back to the show that Nigeria Watch, talking about people, politics, economy, and governance. Ahead of the 2023 general elections, there is absolute need to take a look at inclusion, whether it's that of gender, democracy in itself, are the people ready, and of course accountability. Are we ready to hold our leaders accountable in terms of what they come to offer? Leadership is key here. We have Adora OnyeChere. She is the Executive Director of Gender Strategy Advancement Initiative. She joins us again on the show. Thank you for rejoining us on the program tonight, Adora. We're happy to have you once again. I asked questions earlier, but I may have to reiterate to say inclusion. Is it all about gender? And if yes, what is the situation at this moment with the female folk, I would like to say?
All right, good evening from the show this evening. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
So, first and foremost, I don't think that is certainly just focused on the idea that is about gender or vulnerable persons. I mean, Nigeria has gone through 6 election cycles. Election cycle, you have less than 7% of women and vulnerable persons, which are persons with disability and women living with disability in that space. Time and time again, beyond elections, even in the governance space, you find that cool role for women to be able to engage in policy making. That space is really wide. If you look at Nigeria's statistics, especially in comparison with even just other African countries, making a whole lot of number at the bottom list, about 146 out of 156 in the interparliament for Nigeria's representation and their participation in parliament. So it's not as if this is not a new conversation for country. Started off with 35% affirmative action in an administration like former President Goodluck Jonathan, and now that the national gender policy, which has been revised for such as the executive, the legislature, and even institutions, like INEC. INEC would only do what it can to be able to illuminate some considerations within their agenda unit, their agenda policy, but then activating it's now down to action plans, tables of the institutions, the tables of the politicians, the political parties, and also the tables of even the politicians who are supposed to be in charge of implementation. So for me, I think it's a lack of political will. It's not necessarily burnout of lack of understanding or bias or religion. I think there is a political will by the people, by the institutions that govern the people. The understanding of democracy is basic, I mean, you look at democracy, and it is for the people, by the people. The idea, the bane and the basis of the constitution, it is for the people. Nigeria is made up of what? Women, children, young persons, and the currency of our country in its population is very clear. 50% of this population of our dear country, Nigeria, are women. How do you begin to say to us that, well, like airplane, at the tarmac about to take off, and we just have one wing? Nigeria is like an airplane with 2 wings, but only one wing working, and how can and fly into the airspace actively with only just one wing? It's bound for a crash. And that's why we have so much under development because the other population is excluded by choice. And I say by choice because we are not activating our policies, we are not implementing our national gender policy revision, we're not also instituting affirmative quotas, just like other countries have desired and done. I mean, just in the month of March this year, the National stepped down the five gender bills. And these bills looked at one to make extra seats for women. It looked at indigenship rights, inheritance right, 5% affirmative action for women in the political parties and in appointive positions.
Okay,
So if you have
let me hold you there. Let me hold you there to say, are you holding brief for some of these political parties at the moment? Talking about the frontline political parties going for the presidential seat. The Labour Party, the People's Democratic Party, the All Progressives Congress, in fact, the ruling All Progressives Congress, and all of this. There seems to be the fact that women are actually leading from behind. That's the first question. Or have they completely put the women aside in all of what seems to be maybe political structure, the campaign structure? Because haven't had this opportunity of actually having women come out to say what they want. We've not had that. I've pushed a lot more strings, and I know how far I can go in getting this. And I also want to appreciate you for finding time to be on this program. The question is, do you think Nigerian women have even realized all of these figures, that the fact that the inclusion actually needs them? These are the questions. This is the conversation right now.
all right, I think I'm privileged to call you Absol Baba. So I'm going to start with that because you're an authority in understandings. And I was just about saying that on the 20th of March this year, Nigerian women occupied the National Assembly at the back gates. And what were they asking for? They were asking for one, that women will have the rights to extra seats in the bid by Right Honorable Okiruko Nyajocha, Deputy Chief Whip, that women would have indigenous rights, women would have, of course, citizenship right, percent affirmative action, especially in the political party structure. So we're not just looking at women leaders. The parties will have actionable policies that can achieve measures. That will also have 35% affirmative action for appointed positions. Now, all of these political parties that you have called have all held offices at one time or the other. I think what we need to do is a backgrounding of their pedigree as heads of states or as all heads of their institutions while they were in party, while they were in office. I mean, we've come out to see Peter Obi brandy that yes, he has had a lot of women, in his while he was governor. Correct. However, how many women in their percentages are in the presidential council campaign list of the Labour Party? How many of the women do we see in the flag off and in the consultations and visitations to the states by the PDP? How many of that number do we speaking boldly with the presidential campaign council of the APC? So what I'm saying is, it's not really about the women making up the numbers or leading from the back, but we are asked out, real-time engagement, conversations that are very out there, talking about one, what will they be doing for women in 2023? And I hear them say 35% affirmative action, but they say charity begins at home. How are you activating those numbers now? Recently, the two political parties, PC and PDP, just recently, set up the Women's Presidential Council. And I think that the PDP is about to inaugurate its own. APC started theirs way before that and have already started activating. The Labour often seem to think that, a presidential council for women, is a priority because they already say an open playing field for them is what is most adequate for them. And, every party with their strategy. But what we are saying here is that the women who are candidates in these political parties, how many of them, if you look at backgrounding in state by state, how many of them do you have as candidate assembly level? How many of the women do you have as candidates at the House of Representatives? For instance, in the PDP, there are no female candidates in the PDP whatsoever, state level in Imo State, where I come from to start with. So, how do you begin to say that the voice of women would be represented in that party at the local level, where perhaps is local? And we understand that when we are thinking leadership, we are thinking about leadership from the bottom to the top approach. So the question is, it's not just about for us, really. It's not about the niceties. It's not about the aesthetics of campaign. We're looking at the practicality and the intentions of these people who are saying, come 2023 and take up the office of Mr. President. The APC has not done well for women in this administration, because we have seen women at the National Assembly level. We have seen less women in appointive position. When the ministers that were taken out of office were male, we were thinking that when he appoints ministers, would have an equal playing field, that is, appoint more women with that second chance. But that did not happen. So what we are saying is that all the issues are great when it looks good on paper and on television or on radio, but we just want them to speak through to the issues, that there is an emerging a scarcity of women in the places that matter, policy decision making, and also in the legislature. According to the baseline report by GSI, which was supported by MacArthur and Wole Soyinka Foundation, one of the things that was drawn out in that baseline report is the fact that if there is if there is inclusion of women and persons with disability, what you will have is what we are having now: a resounding aggression of people who are disgruntled because they're excluded, and not necessarily because they are not part of that process. So I think we need to get back to the drawing table. The women need to organize, harmonize their conversations. Beyond just asking for numbers, how many women are really ready to come out to say, you know what, we are daring the odds, and we are behind these women numbers that we think have capacity? Because at the end of the day, that is what the men do. The men, they converge, consensus, they negotiate, and they agree. And I think that the women should look, now that we don't have so much of the numbers at the elective positions as candidates, do we negotiate during this campaign period, post election, and into the new administration?
Okay, one of the questions I would have wanted to ask, which you've already answered, is that you're already accusing the incumbent government. But let's move a little away from that and take the items with the manner with which we put them out on the flyer. To say democracy at this point in time, going into 2023, Nigeria is looking for another fresh breath. I remember in 2015 when Nigerians came out and clamored for a fresh breath, and the APC came with a thunderous change sound, and we all were celebrating. Going the way down 7 years and a half, how would you assess the All Progressives change mantra? I'm asking this question to say, though you've said women haven't been most favored or appointed to positions, I'm now looking at the indices with which Nigerians are gnashing their teeth and asking for food. They're saying they're hungry because just a moment ago I read out to you that the exchange rate now goes for about 16.5%. And then the All Progressives Congress going into the 2023 elections, how do we stand, at which standpoint do we get things right to say, okay, Buhari has done tremendously well in this aspect, in this area, maybe not in totality. Which of these vehicles of development can drive the All Progressives Congress to the villa in 2023? I'm asking these for Nigerians.
I think, first of all, I think you even know the answer to that question. The basic duty of any head of state: protect the lives and the property of its citizens. Number one. Number two, to make sure that they have the enabling environment that drives the economy. Number three, that they have the ability to have basic quality education. If you want to evaluate all of this is across the borderline that you have mentioned, and you are saying that we have 133 people living in extreme poverty as revealed by the Bureau, National Bureau of Statistics, I think that is just the numbers that are given on day, quite much more than that. Why do I say this? Even with the aftermath of the flooding in over the 26 states of the Federation, millions of people, there is a heightened scare of food scarcity by 2023. Beyond the food inflation, there might not be food to go around all households, depending on where you are at. Now, you are also looking at the issue of disease spread, such as cholera, and children also suffering from malaria by being exposed in areas affected by mosquitoes. So the situation case scenario only gets worse. So how am I to judge when our roads are besieged by terrorists by day? 100 people were just kidnapped in a state like Zamfara, and Kaduna State mishap has just come out. Those that have been released, but you know that there are still thousands of children who have been kidnapped that are still yet on fire. So many of them are in bandit squalors. And you are asking if there is anything about this administration that makes them look good. I think that one of the need ourselves the truth as a country and as a leadership is that we need to take responsibilities where there have been errors. We need to be able to win back the trust of, and the only way that they can look at a light at the end of the tunnel, towards any campaign messaging that they have, is to apologize to Nigeria. Just like Aisha Buhari said not too long ago, that she knows that they have failed Nigerians and not giving Nigerians what they promised. So she is apologizing to Nigeria. And so in admitting failure, it is quite obvious that they have not fulfilled their pact with Nigerians for the past 7 years. Because our roads are not safe, our and a developing country to an underdeveloped country. We have seen our children, wallowing in the past 9 months because of ASU strike, and they have got to end the deadlock. We are looking at our hospitals having their brains drained every day, going to other countries to create, an enabling environment for them by adding their skills. And we are a public sector diminished with our president on the plane every day, going for checkup in other countries without looking inwards. We are not saying that, even though his duty is to do that. But we are saying that in the areas that there have been fault lines, the country under this administration should say to itself, these are the areas we have not gotten it right. These are the areas we have failed Nigerians. We apologize for those errors. How do we rework the Nigerian of our dream? We pulled agenda. As far as we are concerned as Nigerians, the echo of any leadership coming into 2023 has to be that of people, has to be that of a citizen, and has to be that of a promise that is not just on paper, but activated with collaboration with what we want.
Oh, okay, let us also go straight to the issue of accountability, because I do not think in any way Nigerians have a measure or yardstick as to knowing how many barrels of crude oil we have lifted from the oceans of offshore of Bayelsa, of Delta State, Akwa Ibom, and all of these barrels of oil are said to be stolen out of our shores. And then nobody can actually hold anybody to account because there is no measure, no systematic procedure as to getting us to know how many barrels of oil has been sold today, Tuesday, November 22, and how much is coming to the government coffers. And the question is, we had a government that promised us that it's going to fight corruption. And how do we get ourselves out of this ahead of the 2023 elections, where citizens do not know, are not aware of how and where to hold their government to account? Do we continue like this? Who will bail the cat? Talking about the issue of accountability, how do we get Nigerian citizens to be enlightened enough, to be informed enough, to know that this government, whichever government is coming, whether it is of the PDP or APC or Labour Party, we Nigerians should hold our leaders accountable. And it's our right. Who preaches this? How do we bring it to our consciousness?
I think we're already conscious. The question is how to activate our consciousness into the real-time space. We see a lot of agitation, a lot of conversations happening on the social media. There are politically aware. And how do you in real time become part of a new change, the new era, the new Nigeria that is? And like I always say, Nigerians should remember that politicians will always be politicians. And even though you are a follower of any politician, your biggest agenda is the Nigerian agenda. And that is why calling leadership into account is very important. Because by the time they win the next election and get into Adora, your number will not be visible on their phone. You probably may never really truly have access. And all those promises that they made you might just become watershed. So what we are saying now is that understood the language of politics in our dynamic political situation. Citizens should also become very aware to develop a citizens mechanism that looks at leaders in the now and not wait for them to activate in the then. And how do you do that? You back candidates, look at their pedigree, look at their roadmap. What have they done? How do they take criticism? Who are their followers and how do they react to responses? Even opposition. So these are the things that we need to say, because even with the whistleblowers, act and their ability to, access it, how much of those information in that coming from the Whistleblowers Act, people who have whistleblown, have they really acted on some of those revelations? Have we seen any and FaceTime? Have we been able to activate some of those information in real time? Then it's down to the citizenship. It's down to the citizenry. It's down to us as Nigerians. I said accountability is about political will. You might be able to speak as much as you do. I mean, everybody I can remember was talking about months from the deceptive interventions that were done by some of the ministries and to the lack of language between and institutions, till when we had to see the National Assembly step in, and that was because, of course, a campaign is coming. Mind you, can we just resolve this so that it's not biting us on the heels? And that is the reason. And that's why I always say, to whom much is given, much is expected. The best office in the land is the office of the citizen. And that is why we must hold leaders accountable now. We're able to dissect and do not allow them to hoodwink us with the aesthetics of campaign promises, because the 2023 election is the very dark, both for women, both for young people, and both for the elder statespeople. That's why I'm saying for women, inclusion is key. And how do we match it? Is by making sure that we have our voters card. How many of the women understand the power in the voters card? And that is the only choice we have as a citizen. Have to go to the polls to say enough is enough. I will not choose a leader that does not think inclusion. I will not choose a leader that does not look at equity and justice. And I will not choose a leader who only talks the talk and does not talk the talk. I think that our currency is enough strategy to be able to negotiate pathway in the 2020. Women are not incapacitated. We are not, we are not, by the way. What we are saying is that we need to be able to have truth in the conversations of candidates, and the women have a chance to be able to define what they really want by calling out this candidate.
Thank you so much. In 60 seconds, we have Atiku Abubakar, former vice president of this country. Elijah Atiku Abubakar, His Excellency. We have Musa Kwankwaso for the New Nigeria People's Party. We have the All Progressives Congress ruling party's candidate, the Jagaban of Lagos, talking about Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And then we have Peter Obi, former governor of Anambra State. The question is, at all of the issues raised, inclusion, democracy, accountability, character, capacity, and all of these issues you've mentioned, do you see in one or all of these leaders the potency, the ability, the energy, the vision to turn around our country? And who could that?
Okay, first of all, I would say this because it's a cliche already. I mean, I said it, but I would echo it, that they are all one and the same, because they have been one member of another party at another time. They have defected, they have come back. And for me, the political party is actually a popular vehicle for this men. And what they are doing in real time is to declare their aspirations on any platform to give them the money, and that's their first charge and their first concern. But in time, when you talk about capacity, about the real sense of the word, and I'm looking at the fact of a person who would champion and who would look at issues of women as a frontline conversation, must be able to look at the pedigree and the roadmap of them, begin to decide who has really, in their time, in their background offices, been appointment. You will find out for Rabiu, he will tell you that he empowered, thousands of men in Kano State, was able to set up small, medium, and also empower a lot of women commissioners. You would also find from Atiku, who would say that he gave women a platform and was able to open up doors for persons like Abiku and made the first female deputy governor in Lagos State. You would find someone like Peter Obi tell you that, oh yes, that in his time as governor, all his major portfolios were occupied by women, his financial commissioner, his commissioner for education, etc., etc. You would also hear Atiku Abubakar tell you that he worked with the passenger, all the key positions and all the major portfolios that were occupied by women were spearheaded by his office as vice president. So they have come through a point of petri. But the watchword is, how do we really review and begin to demystify what is now? I mean, from 1999, 2015, 2019, now we are in 2022, we are going into a new election. Where has the fault lines fallen? We want to see women that can come out and say, yes, in this period of time, these energies, this administration look at continuity in government. I mean, look at this administration, we have women in offices and very few women in appointed positions. So we cannot out this war until we get to the polls and begin to take stock with our voters' card.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Adora, OnyeChere. 1 hour wouldn't be enough for you. A broadcast journalist and, of course, executive director of this wonderful GSAI, that is. I want to say a very big thank you to you, the executive director of Gender Advancement Strategy International. Thank you for your time with us. Appreciate you. Salute.
Thank you.
My name is Abasi Odu Idion. You can follow me on your social media space at Absobaba. I love you. Good night.